those are one of the things I want you to stick around, because I'm going to talk about a case study that I had. I had a mum reach out to me before my last 8-week coaching program. She has a 3-year-old child who was having constipation issues, refusal to try new things, and just pushing things away. Like, absolutely, I'm not going to eat that. Saying things are yuck, saying like, I'm never going to try that. And when we started working together, she was so desperate to make some changes. One of her goals was getting her daughter off her laxatives, because she was taking a daily laxative and had been for like over a year, because of how limited her diet was. And this 3-year-old child, was one of my more difficult cases in my small coaching group. But because the group is so small, I get a chance to know everybody. And by about week 6, they'd been really solidly, consistently implementing the things that we talk about in the group, which was absolutely fantastic. And by week 6, even I was kind of like, okay, when are things going to turn around? Like, some kids turn around really quickly. And like, some of the kids in this group that I had, like, within a couple of weeks, like, stress levels were much lower and they're already trying things. But some kids do naturally take longer. And so by week 6, before our call, like, the mum posted in the group, hey, my daughter tried an egg custard and she doesn't like eggs. So this was a really, really big deal. And so what I wanted to talk about was, in this, like, with this case study with this 3-year-old, she started at such a point of shutting down. It really was shutting down. When there was a new food on her plate, ooh, yuck, it was a really strong, like, I don't want that. Like, she would close her mouth, she would turn away, she didn't want to be at the table. And that was impacting her ability to go to the toilet. Like, she needed a laxative every day. But in week 6, when she started trying new foods, mum said, we've been off the laxatives for a week. And when I caught up with her yesterday, so my group finished 3 weeks ago. So we're 3 weeks post group, and I like to often do a follow-up, like a bonus call after 3 weeks, to just check in and see how everyone is doing. Because during the group, there's weekly tasks. There's, like, you see me every week on a call, and you've got my support between the calls and a private chat where you let me know how your homework is going, where you are with, like, did your child scream and run out of the room when you attempted to do your homework? Like, how did it go? And then I can support you during the week. And because when the group finishes, we don't have those weekly check-ins and that accountability anymore. It's really important to me to see how everyone was going. And yesterday, the mum of this 3-year-old was telling me that they ate out as a family for the first time ever. And she was able to eat something, which was amazing. And that when she's at preschool, her teachers have noticed that she's trying a lot more new things. She's tried in the last couple of weeks sausage, Yorkshire pudding. There was something else that had veggies in it as well. And that she's much more open to trying new things. And really considering the group is only 8 weeks. And it's if you're somebody that's got a moderate picky eater, it's a really good amount of time to start implementing changes in, like, removing all the pressure. Changing your communication is a really big part of it, and coming up with a roadmap to helping your child want to be at the table and wanting to enjoy meal times. So if you've just hopped on this live and you've got a question, I'm going to do a little bit of Q&A. So feel free to post anything. But if you're the parent of a picky eater, did that story of this mum with the 3-year-old resonate with you? Is it something that you're struggling with as well? It might not be as severe as your child needing like medicine for constipation, like a laxative or anything like that. But that is a really common side effect of children that are not eating enough variety, that they really struggle going to the toilet. I've got a mum at the moment who, she's got a 9-year-old neurodivergent child, and she's had to be on laxatives for the last couple of weeks. And it's been a real struggle, and a lot of parents do struggle with this, and it's not really something that we talk about very much. So Catherine says, I think so your child won't try anything new. You think for him it's become a way to control his life. That's exactly right. And you also said, we parents are divorced and dad alienates, so it's complicated. I'm health orientated, but dad isn't. All the good eating habits my son had are gone at this point. I try. So I want you to know, if you're like show of hands or like comment or something, how many of you are divorced or separated? I myself am in the middle of a very uncomfortable, not particularly nice pathway to divorce, I suppose is the right way to say it. So depending what your custody arrangement is, I had someone reach out to me the other day that they've got their child 9 days in the fortnight. I can tell you, even with the 50-50 custody arrangement, you can absolutely make progress and changes. I can relate pretty hard to what you're saying about one parent wanting like good health habits and the other parent flagrantly disregarding that. My children sent me a message last night while they were eating dinner, and they were telling me that they're watching TV, which is interesting, different, not something that we ever did when we lived together as a family, and not something that I recommend that you do. So I really do understand. So it's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So you each have the child for 2 weeks at a time. So no doubt there would be like a slight period of when your child comes back to you, you've got to reinstitute the rules, and that's totally okay because you do have that longer 2-week period. Like for example, like I can't talk too much specifics about my custody arrangement because we're still in court, but I can say that my kids are moving in and out much more regularly than that. And you absolutely can still make progress with that because children do understand different rules with different people. Like they understand at school there are different rules than at home, or at my friend's house there are different rules. So I'm also curious how old your child is, because for really young children it's hard. It's still doable. It's manageable. Samantha says, my 3-year-old has decreased the variety of the food she will eat over the past year. Lately, it's mostly carbs and sweets. She doesn't like many vegetables or meat and fish. We serve sweets and meals together. Okay, I was actually going to create a piece of content about this. Serving sweets on the plate with everything else is an excellent strategy. It is not going to fix all the problems that you're having. That's a big misconception. So when we work together in the small coaching group or one-on-one, obviously I'm talking, my next small coaching group starts next week. So if that's something that you're interested in and something that you feel like you need support with, stick around and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. You can also send me a private message to ask for the link, because the link's not on my website. You can only get it from sending me a private message. So with a 3-year-old, it's really great that you've identified this as like, this is a problem. It's gotten worse. We don't want it to get to the point where you have a 5-year-old who's only doing that. So the sooner you get started, the better. What I will say is that it's not uncommon that they very much want sweets and carbohydrates, because those are the really simple, easy things to like. So if I was to draw a roadmap, if you were to, Samantha, if you were to join the coaching group and you were like asking me like, how do we begin to have more variety? That's what you've asked me. Not sure how to increase variety again. It can very much get to the point where, hey, this is all my child is eating. I want them to eat, so I just keep feeding them this food, even though that's not what I want to do, and I know that they need more variety. So the first thing we have to do is we have to remove all pressure. And I can tell you, even if you think you've removed all forms of pressure, you haven't. I speak to parents on the phone all the time. A lot of them have followed me for like a reasonable amount of time when they reach out and they're like, hey, I've been following you. Like, we remove pressure. We don't bribe, or we don't use the iPad or this and that. And then I ask them to tell me a little bit more about like, what's your situation? What's it like at mealtimes? Like, if you put the food down in front of your child, an avocado, here you go. I need to cut the tags off these. Here's your avocado on the plate. What's your child going to do? Are they going to scream, ooh, yuck, I don't want that? Are they going to run out of the room? Are they going to throw the food? Are they going to go to the fridge and try to get something else? And I want to know, like, what are the dynamics of your conversation with your child? What do you say when your child says, ew, gross, I don't want that, or they run away? Because every parent that I've ever spoken to who thinks they've removed all forms of pressure, they haven't. And that's one of the first things that we have to start working on. Your child is never going to feel comfortable trying a new food if there is pressure there. And even like we're all meaning the best here. I'm by no means pointing fingers and saying like, you suck, you're a terrible parent, because you're not. The reason we pressure our children is out of fear that they're not eating enough, or they're not eating enough variety. So you're not a bad parent for doing that. What you can do is you can control what you can control. You can change the way you speak to your child. You can change the way you communicate with them to, one, remove the pressure, and two, set up a really nice, stable environment at the meal. And also, a lot of this communication comes into practice before you get to your meal. I cannot stress this enough. And that is what, at the beginning, we need to work on that. Absolutely, before we can start increasing variety. In the first couple of weeks of the group, that's what we do. We need to remove all forms of pressure, both from you and from your child. We need to work on your mindset. If we do not have those two things at a good place, we're never going to get anywhere. So those are the most important things. So removing the pressure, setting up a really good mealtime environment with good communication. And then from there is when we start introducing different foods and challenging those foods. And there are some specific ways that we do that in the group. So before we start, before we have our first call, I send you out a questionnaire that I need you to fill out. What are your child's current reliable foods? What are things that they like? And what are some of the goal foods you have? Because everyone has different goals. Some people want their kids to eat meat. Like, I'm working with a mum at the moment who really wants her kid to start eating meat. And we had a call the other day, and she told me, she said to me, I sat down, we were having a chicken dish, and I had the game in my head that you wanted me to play with my child, and I didn't think it was going to work, but I'm like, okay, I'll do it anyway because Talia told me to do it. So I sat down and I did it with him, and he put the meat in his mouth, and then he chewed it and played the game with me, and then he swallowed it. So, okay, first of all, that's awesome. Second of all, the point is, it depends what your goals are. Some parents want their kids to eat, like, carrots, for example. Some parents eat a lot of rice and their child doesn't eat rice, and they want their child to eat rice. So we work on the goals that you have. Because I keep the groups really small, there's between 6 and 8 families. I get to know everybody in the group, which is really nice. I get to know your specific child. For example, there was one child in my previous group when we did an activity, like one of the homework pieces to engage them involved opening our mouth and showing them our chewed up food. And this one child gagged when we did that, when the mum did that. And I'm like, great, thanks for telling me. We're not going to do that again with you. We're going to give you something else. So you'll feel very supported, and it's considering it's a coaching group, you still get an awful lot of my support one-on-one for your specific needs and questions. All right, I'm just going back and having a look. Catherine, yeah, no worries. I understand. Where in the world, I always like to ask this, where in the world are you tuning in from? Yesterday I had mostly people in North America. Lauren, the 3-year-old you worked with, you mentioned her anxiety decreased. How was the child anxious before? Oh my gosh, that's an excellent question. Lauren, are you still on the live? I hope you are, and I get to answer this with you here. So one of the things she had anxiety about was actually going to the toilet, and she would hold herself in when she needed to poop because she was on these laxatives because she couldn't poop because she didn't have enough variety in her diet. She was eating the same, like, she was very limited. She was more of an extreme than a moderate picky eater. I think she had about 5 or 6 reliable foods, which is very, very restricted. So when she would go to the toilet, it would be painful and she wouldn't want to go. And when I found this out, I'm like, okay. So I said, we can't talk about this in the call because, like, this mum was the only one experiencing that. So that's why we have an online chat, like a group chat, where I said, can you just put that question in the chat and I'll send you a voice note with what to do. And so I sent her a voice note and I gave her some ideas of how she can help her child go to the toilet without having that sort of anxiety. And within like a week, she was saying that her daughter was going to the toilet on her own. And then once that anxiety decreased, she was having anxiety around the food. The way anxiety looks around food is a little different for each child. Sometimes it can be a really big reaction, like the child literally screaming, pushing the food away, saying, no, I'm not going to eat that. It could be clasping their hand over their mouth. Pushing the food away is another one. Telling you, I'm not going to eat that. That in itself is a form of anxiety because the kid's telling you that because they think that you're going to make them eat it. And that's a scary thing for a child, thinking that they're going to be forced to eat something. Imagine if you went to someone's house and you were like expected to like lick the floor or something. That would make you really uncomfortable and probably have some anxiety as well. So the way anxiety looks is different for different children, is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of children that I've worked with, like, you may not say like, hey, this child is like has anxiety that is diagnosed, but if your child is showing you signs that they are really uncomfortable being at the table, like they don't want to be at the table, you can't get them to the table, you can't get them to stay at the table, they won't try certain things, they turn their face away, they push it off, they throw it off their plate, like those are all signs that something is not quite right. A child who's feeling really comfortable and confident isn't going to do those things. So I hope that answers your question about the food anxiety. How do I get my toddler to eat meat? It's just impossible. It's not impossible. I promise you. I'm not sure if you were here when I was just gave that example of the client that has this is a different client with a 3-year-old who he's a boy and he won't eat meat, but he did actually chew and swallow meat the other day for the first time, and it was like Mum had told me, she said it to me, she's like, I sat down, I was ready to do the activity that you said for us to do, and I didn't think it was going to work. And then he put it in his mouth, chewed it, and swallowed it. Like, she couldn't believe it. So, like, that was huge. Oh, you're in Adelaide. I'm in the Adelaide Hills. How do I deal with seasonal availability of fruits and veggies? Kiddo forgets she likes foods without exposure. That's an excellent question as well, actually. Well, this isn't possible with all foods, but if you can buy the frozen or canned variety of it during the year, that can be helpful because they'll still see it and they have the opportunity to be exposed to it. And you can talk about, yeah, it comes out of a can, like if it's asparagus or something like that. Yeah, these are asparagus in the can. Like, they're much softer than the ones that you buy when they're fresh. Let's find a recipe that we can put them in. And you know what? Like, you might also have a preference. As I'm saying, like canned asparagus, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not a big fan of canned asparagus. I don't really enjoy the texture of them. So even within that variety of like the same vegetable, depending how they're processed or cooked, they could have a different flavor and texture that you might not love either. So having some respecting and understanding that can happen, trying to keep the exposures up between the seasons if you can with a frozen or canned variety. And then when they come back into season, walk through the supermarket together. Hey, like, this is like, let's see like what produce is available. Do you remember what we cooked with asparagus last year, for example? Like, that can be really helpful as well. Like, maybe if you have like a favorite asparagus dish that they did love last year, you can ask them, do you remember the asparagus dish that we ate last year and what it was? And if they do, great. I've got another person from Adelaide. Hello, Philadelphia. Oh my goodness, it's got to be late for you over there, isn't it? Hi. East Coast time, right? That's oh, good, Lauren. You were there. You did get to hear the answer. Excellent. Okay, my poll over on TikTok has finished. I asked you, does your child eat a variety of food from all the food groups? And 100% of you said no. Oh my goodness, that's not what I like to hear. So that's one of the ways, like a quick way to determine if your picky eating is truly concerning and a problem. Because if your child's not eating a variety from each food group, that is a problem. Like, if they're only eating one kind of fruit, that's not variety. If they're eating 3 types of vegetables, that's a good start. But it needs to be across all the food groups as well. How to make a 7-year-old eat fruits? He never wants to taste a bit of fruit. All right, so that's a really good question. I hope you're still on the live. Suma, I'm not sure if that's your name or not. Kelly, I do have a fuzzy avocado. I also have I couldn't help myself. I went looking for a squishmallow for my friend's child for his birthday, and when I saw these, I'm like, I have to get these for work, like, because sometimes I have a child show up on a call, like when I'm talking to the parents, and like it's a great way to engage them and to like open a bit of a conversation with them. So I couldn't help myself. Yes, I do have fuzzy fruits with me. and I'm going to keep them here. I need to cut these tags off because they're still pretty new. Okay, thank you. For my 7-year-old, the mum of the 7-year-old here, it's interesting. Your child is a little bit older. That's not to say it's not doable. It absolutely is. I had a mum that has, in my group that just finished, she had a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they've made a lot of progress with the 6-year-old and a reasonable amount of progress with the 9-year-old. The longer you wait, the longer time those habits have had to become really entrenched, and it's going to take longer depending on the child. But that's not to say that you can't do it. So I mentioned earlier on like kind of what a roadmap looks like when we're working together in the small coaching group. So the first thing we need to figure out, like if you and I were working together in the small coaching group, I would ask you, like, what's the history about the fruit with your 7-year-old? Was it recently they stopped eating fruit? Is it all fruit? Is it some fruit? And also what kind of things do they currently enjoy eating? So when someone joins the group, you get a questionnaire of like, what are your child's current reliable foods and what are some of your goal foods? Because once I have that information, particularly their current reliable foods, I use those as a stepping stone and a bridge to help you get from where you are to where your goals are. So if your goal is to have them eat fruit, I need to have a look at what their reliable current foods are and come up with some ideas for you on how to challenge those current reliable foods with a fruit. And there are lots and lots of different ways we do this, not only just through these ideas, but also so much. And I say this every time I'm on a live. I try to say it in every video. The way we communicate with our children is essential to helping them have the intrinsic drive to try a new food. This communication needs to start before you sit down to a meal. It needs to start before you prepare the meal. It needs to start, like, there are times where, like, one of the mum that I was talking about earlier, their kids are working on meat. I sent them a voice note last night because we have a private chat. When we work together, we have a private chat, even in the group, private chat. So you can send me messages and let me know how things are going during the week. And I can give you support during the week. That is what is going to help you move forward. And that's why my clients make so much progress in a short amount of time, because they have access to me and to ask questions, to have accountability, and to make sure that they're doing the assignments that I've assigned you. Like, when you work with me, you're investing money into fixing your problem, and I invest a lot of time back into you to help you make sure that you do get the problem taken care of. Okay, anyway, so about the meat. I said, you don't even have to worry about doing this actual assignment until after our next call. These are the conversations I want you to have with your child between now and then. So this is where, when I say communication is essential, it's not a phrase. Like, I have a lot of phrases like to use and stuff like that, but the phrase itself is not going to work. They're just words. If your mindset isn't in a place of being confident, and a lot of parents, they're not. They're like, okay, I'm trying this thing I found on social media and I'm going to hope that this one works. And sometimes you'll get like a quick win, which is great, but other times you won't, because you're not feeling that confidence. When we work together, you walk away from every call with a plan, and we troubleshoot that plan. Like, I will say, like, this is what we're going to do, for example, with the meat. And I want to hear from everybody that's on the call. Oh, I'm a bit concerned, like, my son is going to react in this way, or my child's going to scream, or my child's going to say, like, no. And we'll troubleshoot what you're going to do and the conversation you're going to have if that comes up. So this is like I said, like, communication is complicated. Talking to kids about food and setting up a responsive environment where they feel safe and they feel as though they are not pressured is really important. That's where we start. Before we talk about getting onto fruit and meat and all of those things, we don't start on those types of things until we have first figured out, how do you talk to your child about food? How do you remove all the pressure through communication? Because everything at a mealtime is communication, right? If you're looking at your child's food, if this is your child's avocado and you're sitting there staring at it, you might not be saying to your child, I want you to eat that, but you are saying that non-verbally. So once we have set up a really nice environment where there is no pressure or very little pressure, that's where we can start saying, okay, our goals are working on meat, our goals are working on fruit. We cannot work on goals if we don't have a good foundation first, because your child will never eat the thing if they feel pressured. Your child will never eat the thing if the way you're communicating with them is like, watermelon is so healthy, it's going to make you grow up big and strong, and you need to eat it so you can go to the toilet. That is pressure. Those are not effective ways to communicate and get the result you want. They're fine to communicate, but you won't get the result you want. Okay. Sweating it out at 7 doesn't work. Cold snacks on a camp. The night before, what to do for lunch tomorrow? What if the meat plan fails? Kelly, you have so many questions. How do you feel about advising your child they need snacks, but they don't want? So it depends. Hang on, I'm a bit confused. I'm not sure how old your child is. So one of these things, in the group, and I work with clients that have children of lots of different ages. Like the youngest kid in the group that just finished was 3, and the oldest one was 11. And the way you communicate with a 3-year-old is very different from the way you communicate with an 11-year-old. So when we were in the group, because the group is small, I know everybody who's there, and I know the different ages. And there are kids in between these ages too. I've got a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, a couple of 5-year-olds, and this 4-year-old and a 3-year-old. So I'll say, like, this is sort of a conversation more if your child is like 5+, and then for the ones that are 4 and 3, like, this is how I want you to communicate it. So, okay, Kelly, your child is 7. So based on, and again, it really depends on what are your child's current liked foods and what is going on with them, because what your child is experiencing at 7 is different from what my other client that has a 7-year-old is experiencing. Your techniques are going to be different. Your goals are going to be different. Their reliable foods are going to be different. Their life experiences are going to be different. One child may have had a gagging and choking incident that was very stressful. One might only eat meat. The other one might not eat any meat. So the way we strategize this and the types of conversations that are going to be effective for your child, they differ from from one family to another. So I do want to stress that as well. So Kelly, I'll ask you back a question. Why do you think your child doesn't want to eat or make snacks? If we were working together, that would be my question to you. Okay, somebody said those are all the things that I say. Serena, things like, oh, this is healthy for you, you need to eat it to help you grow and stuff. So those are all forms of pressure. And I'm not here to tell you like you're a terrible parent for saying that, because you're not. You're a parent who, we say these things out of fear. We're fearful that our child isn't eating these things, and we want them to eat them because we know that they're good for them. We know that it's going to help them poop regularly. So you're not saying it because you're a bad parent. I'm saying what you can do is this is your conversation and your language are things that you can control. When you can communicate in a more effective way with your child, you control that. You're not going to control if your child puts the fruit in their mouth, chews it, and swallows it. Just like my client who did the game with the meat. She can't control if her child puts the meat in his mouth and chews it and swallows it, but she can control whether or not she does the game. She can control how she talks to him about it. Is she going to approach it from a point of fear of like, oh, you need to let's play this game about meat so that you can eat it? Like, saying that is not going to be helpful, but instead being really confident in this game, like, yeah, we're going to give this game a go. And you approach this from, and then you like explain what the game is. Like, I'm going to do this and come help me, like watch me do this. That is approaching it from a very different perspective, mindset wise. And the way you communicate it is also hugely different. My God, when I talk for this long, my voice and my throat, like, water. So Serena, do you think that how are you going to be able to change some of your communication with your child? Okay, Kelly, my child does jujitsu aftercare. How can I keep him healthy, full, active child? I feel bad making him accountable for not making a snack. Do I need to make him accountable? Okay, so that's a good question. The answer to that is different. It's hard for me to give you an answer because I don't know your child. My child is 7, but every 7-year-old is different. I personally would not make my child accountable for packing their own snack. But of course, I'm very familiar with my situation. I'm not familiar with your situation. I don't know if your child has the time to do that. I don't know if your child is really driven. Like some people will tell me, oh, my child just doesn't ever really want to eat. So a child who doesn't really ever want to eat isn't making them accountable for making their snack is basically saying, my child is never going to make a snack. So you're not going to set yourself up to be successful, which is why when we work together, I need to know this sort of history so that I can actually like give you a strategy that will help you. My little used to eat everything that I put in front of him. Now he's 2 and saying no to everything. So he's doing exactly what he needs to do. He is telling you, this is my body. He's showing you resistance. He's showing you, I have autonomy and I'm going to say no. And he wants to see your reactions to things. Kim, my guess is since he's 2, it's probably only just started happening. You may not feel like you need online coaching. I've got an online course called Mealtimes Without Meltdowns that'll give you all the foundations and basics on how to approach this from such an early age, because if you get on top of it early, you're hopefully not going to have to work with me ever, because you will know exactly how to respond to your child before the picky eating becomes an ingrained habit, which is what happens when kids are like 2.5, 3, 4, where this has been going on for like a large percentage of their life. How do I get my child to eat vegetables when she's a picky eater? Beck, I'm guessing that you may have just joined. So, thank you. I love the Squishmallows too. Makes sense. We have tons more to ask. You're amazing. Been watching since she was 4. You've been following for 3 years, Kelly. Oh my goodness. So I'm guessing that you've probably tried a lot of the things that you've seen on my channel. I don't like it's lovely to hear that you've been with me for 3 years, but also at the same time, I don't want you to be here for 3 years. I was on a discovery call yesterday with a lady who said that she did OT and feeding therapy for 2 years. And I said to her, I was like, we're not working together for 2 years. Like the longest client I've worked with was about 1.5 years. And it's not uncommon with me if I'm working with a parent that has lots of children. Like, for example, I've got a mum with 4 kids at the moment, and we're just about to finish our 5 months together, but she's renewing and we're going to continue working together, because when you're working with 4 children, some of them are teenagers, they have very different likes and dislikes, and we have to work really it's a slow process because we can't focus on just one child. We have to focus on all of them. So Kelly, why don't you perhaps send me a private message? Are you at the point where you do feel like you need more help than this? Because 3 years, and I'm guessing when you found me, your child had probably at 4 been struggling before that. That's a really long time, not only for your child to be missing out on optimal nutrition, but for you. Like, no doubt that this is stressful and impacting you on a daily basis, which isn't ideal. I'm glad you like the advice. That's wonderful to hear. So Beck, the child who's not eating vegetables, when we start working together, I need to find out why it is that your child's not eating vegetables. When did that happen? What are some of their reliable foods? And from there, I also need to understand the dynamics that you have at mealtimes. The first thing that we need to do, if you've watched or if you've been watching for a while, I'm not going to repeat myself, but what we really need to do is remove all forms of pressure. And no parent that I have ever spoken to on a discovery call has ever removed all forms of pressure. Even if you've followed me for 3 or 4 years, a parent will get on the phone with me and they'll say like, oh, I tell my child that they need to eat this to be healthy. That's pressure. I know it's well-meaning pressure, but it's still pressure. Okay, Kelly, you're not struggling. Okay. He's not. I make it easier for him and help. So you gave in. Is that's also like, I'm just reading some of these comments. So it's not uncommon for parents to give in because we love our children and we want them to eat the food that we put in front of them. And if they don't, we don't want them to go hungry. And so when you give in, you can actually make the picky eating worse. Because like, let's say I've made chicken and vegetables for dinner. And my child sits down at the table, looks at it and says, no thanks, I'm done, walks off. And then 20 minutes later, when dinner's cleared up, comes back, I want a snack, I'm hungry. But you don't want them to go to bed hungry, so you give them the thing that they ask for. You are reinforcing the picky habit. You are reinforcing, oh, hey, yeah, you don't want to eat dinner? No worries. That's fine. You don't have to eat dinner, which is great that you're not forcing them to eat dinner. But then they're coming back and they're saying, oh, I want a granola bar. And you say, oh, here you go. They have no incentive to eat their dinner now, and you are ingraining it in them. Like children's brains, they there's a book, a Dan Siegel book. What's it called? The Whole Brain Child, where they talk about like neurons that wire together, fire together, wire together. So when that happens once, your child is always going to ask you when they skip dinner, can I have this snack? So Kelly, what are some examples of pressure? Well, there are the really obvious ones, like eat 3 bites of your watermelon and I'll give you ice cream, or you can watch your iPad. But then like the more subtle forms of pressure are things like, oh, avocado is so healthy for you. It's going to help you grow and be really strong, because you're basically telling your child, if you don't eat this avocado, this thing that they don't want to eat, they're not going to grow up big and strong. That's like kind of awful when you reframe it that way. And I think a lot of parents don't think about that's how the message is being received. Okay, so Serena, my little boy gagged the other day when I semi-bribed him to put rice in his mouth. Something's definitely got to change for us. I'm likely doing it all wrong. Definitely interested in your program to stop pressuring. Okay, Serena, I hope you're still on the live. I kind of wish I had read that earlier. If you are interested in the program, there's only a couple of days left to register because it starts next week. So send me a private message, like literally get off this live right now. Send me a message, go to my profile, send me a message. I came from your live. Please give me the group information. Oh, good. You're still here, Serena. Good. So send me a private message and ask, because the group registration link is not on my website. It's via DM only. So if you want information on it, send me a private message. Let me know you came from the live. And yeah, there's just a couple of days left to register. But are there classes for spouses? Have your spouse join. One of the mums that I spoke to yesterday on a discovery call, she asked me the same question. I said, look, it's ideal for your spouse to be on the calls too, because for one thing, if we're on a call for an hour, the calls are 45 minutes, but we usually go for an hour because there's a lot to talk about. It's ideal for your spouse to be on the call too, so that one, they can ask questions. Two, so that you don't have to be the one who then has to coach them on how to do everything. Like, it's just better for them to just be there and hear it from me. And then they feel empowered to have the conversations and implement it with you, rather than like you telling it to them and they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm doing it right or anything like that. And I record all the calls. So if your spouse can't be there, or if you're not together, they can call in from their own phone or computer or whatever. But they can also listen to it 1.5 speed would be the way I would listen to it. So they can still like know what the homework assignments are, know how like what we're doing this week, how we're changing our communication and that type of thing. So I highly recommend spouses are there, but they don't have to be. A lot of mums show up on their own, and that's okay. What is the chicken game? Are you asking me what I told that mum to do with her 3-year-old son who wasn't eating chicken? Can you subliminally message them to me, please? What, the techniques? It was a game about chewing. And because one of the reasons that not all children, some children, one of the reasons that some children struggle with meat is that because it's not enough to say texture, because every meat has its own texture. But then if you grind the meat, like beef, ground beef tastes very different from like beef steak, which tastes very different when you've barbecued it versus slow cooked it versus pressure cooked it versus stewed it. So it's not right to say that it's a texture thing, because there are so many different textures of meat. What it usually comes down to is that it's hard to chew. It requires a lot of work. Think about the last time you chewed a piece of like beef steak, for example. You have to chew it a lot. It doesn't actually break down very much in your mouth. There's no, like, you don't have enzymes in your mouth that are starting to break it down. Your teeth have to do all the work. And chewing a lot makes your jaw tired. And if you're a child who's been at school all day or running around all day and growing and tired and close to bedtime, it's not ideal for them to be like running a marathon with their mouth chewing a piece of meat. So they just decide not to eat it because it's easier for them. So that's maybe that sort of sheds a little bit of light onto it. To my husband, when I was pregnant, I could not stand the smell of ketchup or barbecue meat and ketchup. Oh, yeah, when I was pregnant, I kind of went off peanut butter, which is a staple in my diet. I'd rather find something else. So do you find that your spouse isn't on board and that's the problem? Because these types of things, like, I'll be really honest. There was a mum that I spoke to I don't know, 3 weeks ago on a discovery call. She was all in. She was like, I want to do the coaching. I want to do it. Like, I'm ready to make these changes. But my husband has his own very strict diet and he is quite rigid with it. Well, she didn't say it like that. I said, so your husband is quite rigid with his diet. And she hadn't quite put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, that's exactly the issue that you're having with your child. And your husband doesn't realize it. So I sort of said to her, I'm like, this is only going to be successful if we all work together. It's different if you're in a split home, like myself, for example. If you have an ex-spouse who's just a shit head, sorry. If you have an ex-spouse that is not willing to play ball and do what's in the best interest of your child, that's their issue and it happens in their house. Children in your house know your rules. In your house, if your rule is that you do not watch TV during meal times, but at your spouse's house, that is what they do. Your children are not dumb. They will realize that that's what they do with one parent, but not with you. They may give you pushback and they may say things like colorful things like, oh, I want to be with dad because dad lets me watch TV. That's fine. We're not that's my boundary here. I get that. You'll be back at your dad's house in whatever many days you can watch it then. That's fine. But generally speaking, if you're living in the same house and you're hopefully you are in a nice, respectful, wonderful relationship where both parents are there at meal times, where possible, and they both play a good role in the child's life, it's best if your spouse can be on board as well. So what I kind of told this mum was like, I don't think it's really going to be that successful for you if you're not both on the same page, if we're not working on this together. You might find that the results that you get take a really long time because your kid's getting such mixed messages in the same household. For example, if one spouse thinks it's okay to say, oh, you need to eat meat to grow up big and strong, and that's constantly the message they're getting, you're constantly battling them like at the table to not say that and to like change that message. It's really, unfortunately, not going to be successful. I feel like we live different lives. My husband works night shift or swing shift. Yeah, that's totally different. 3-year-old shows a lot of interest in food, but won't put anything in his mouth, then gags when he does. Luna, is that only with disliked foods? Has that always been the case? If that's always been the case, you may want to get that checked with an OT, actually with a speechy, in case there's a swallowing issue with a highly sensitive gag reflex. He's extremely picky, but I'm not sure if it's just a sensory aversion or not. He's been in feeding therapy and speech. Okay. How's that going? Feeding therapy and speech. I often speak to parents who have been in feeding therapy for like 6 months to 2 years with very little. Some have great results, but some don't. And the ones that I usually speak to haven't had great results because they're obviously talking to me. They're not getting the result they wanted yet. My guess is that you might be feeding was at about 16 months old and taught him to chew and stop choking. So maybe your child does have some children. So when you have a baby, their gag reflex is higher up in their throat to protect their airway. And then as they get older, the gag reflex moves further back down the throat as they learn to chew, and they're less likely to choke. So it's not uncommon for children to gag, but if it's actually choking, as in like getting lodged in the trachea, into the esophagus, that's signaling a problem. If it's like actual choking, you said they're 3 now. Even touching with his tongue makes him gag. Like the tip. Wow. Okay. What's the speech he said? Because that doesn't seem like that sounds like something more underlying rather than something behavioral. Like I've worked with children that they will gag only with things that they don't like, which is like sometimes that can be a sign of having been pressured, which is unfortunate. But it is more behavioral. And so again, like I said earlier on, the only way to help with that is to remove all the pressure. Speech is going well. He's improved a ton. Okay, that's really good. It sounds like with the gag reflex being like so high, that it's more likely to have something like, physical going on. Kelly, behavioral versus physical. Yes. So a child who gags on everything is most likely has something else going on versus a child who will only gag on things that they don't like. But they can eat happily they can happily eat ice cream and they can happily eat crackers. But if you put avocado in front of them, they'll gag. That's more behavioral. All right. I've been on this live. Gosh, it's been like over 45 minutes. It is time for me to go and get some lunch. I know it's late for all of my US people. If you've been on the live and you think, hey, I'm interested in joining this small group, send me a private message, ask me about it. I can send you the link. It starts next week. There's only a couple of days left to register and get started. So just shoot me over a message. If you have any questions, if you're not sure it's the right fit for you, ask a question. I'm here. I'll be answering them. And thanks for being here. And Kelly, I'm glad you love the advice. I'm glad you find it helpful. And best of luck with your 7-year-old. And I'll quite possibly be live again tomorrow. Oh, hi. One of my past clients just popped on. I say hello to both of them back, Bennett and Benson. This is you got Devin. You're like one of my absolute star clients. These folks showed up, both parents, every call together, always walked away and implemented everything, changed the way they communicated with their child who has avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, absolutely turned things around in the space of 5 months, which is incredible. The way they communicate with their sons now is just absolutely fantastic. They've removed all the pressure. They do so well. And they've just, I couldn't be prouder of you. So hi, thanks for popping on and saying hello. All right. I hope you guys have a good evening and or a good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And I will see you again soon, maybe tomorrow. Okay. Bye.